I'm Laura Vitale. On this episode of Laura in the Kitchen, I'm going to show you how to make a very traditional meat sauce. Now, to some of you, this video might be a little controversial, and I'll explain. Now, to most people, and I totally understand, meat sauce and bolognese are the same thing. For me, they're not. I've already done a video on traditional bolognese from where I come from, and that was one of my earliest episodes, which is delicious, and it's a meat sauce, and we put carrots, onions, and peas, and it's relatively quick cooking, about 45 minutes, and that is a dish all on its own, and we serve it with either tagliatelle or pappardelle or rigatoni, whatever your heart desires, but that's its own thing. This kind of meat sauce is the base that we use for lasagna, which actually, when I made my lasagna video, this is the recipe I used, except I ended up using some ground sausage as well. Or you can use this for my eggplant parm, or I'm going to actually make stuffed shells tonight, so I'm going to use mine with stuffed shells. I mean, it's endless possibilities what you can do with the sauce, and the ingredients for it, I mean, they're so super simple, and they're so easy to get a hold of, and there's few of them. It's just a little time consuming because it cooks for a few hours. So yeah, let's get started by showing you exactly what you're going to need. You're going to need some ground beef, some tomato puree or some passata, some red wine, onion, extra virgin olive oil, salt. You'll need a little black pepper and some basil. And that's it. I'm telling you, the ingredients for this are super simple. And I know what everyone's thinking, where's the garlic? We don't put garlic in our meat sauce. I never have. I've been using this recipe for years and years and years. You know, my grandmother showed me this recipe. It's just the meat sauce that we use. So I'm hoping that you'll enjoy it, and I think you will once you make it. But anyway, what I've got here is a large, pretty heavy bottomed pot, and I'm preheating over about high heat, and I'm adding a couple tablespoons of olive oil to that, and I want that to get nice and hot, so I'm going to test it. A little bit of the ground beef. Yeah, that's good. So I'm going to add in my ground beef. There you go. I'm going to break it up. Try to break it up as much as you can with your wooden spoon. It needs a touch more oil. It looks a little dry, but that's fine. And as that cooks, I'm going to chop up my onion. I'm going to chop up this onion pretty fine dice. I want it kind of small. So like I was saying before, to some people, bolognese and meat sauce is the same thing, but you know, to me it's not, and that's the beauty of cooking. I mean, everyone has his own recipe, everyone has their own way of doing things, and this just happens to be my meat sauce. I shouldn't say my recipe because it's really not. It's my grandmother's and my mother's, and we've made it this way for years. So I'm just going to cut up my onion nice and fine. My ground beef is not all the way cooked through yet, but mostly. And as you can see, I used a relatively lean ground beef, so I don't have a whole lot of fat, but if you're using like a fattier cut, if you're using like a chuck, I would suggest that you probably need to get rid of some of the fat that comes out, that renders out of the ground beef as you cook it, because you don't want your end result to be greasy and oily and fatty, because then it just takes away from the flavor of the sauce. Now I've added my onions to the ground beef, and I'm going to salt them. Not a whole lot. I'm not going to add any pepper yet. I'm just going to give this a nice little toss, a stir. And I'm going to let this cook for about 8 to 10 minutes, or until the onions have cooked down a bit. And then I'll show you the next step. That looks awesome. And like I said, you can see that there's not really a lot of fat hanging out, so I'm not going to get rid of any. Well, there's nothing to get rid of. So now to this, I'm going to add in some red wine. I'm going to use, I always use a Merlot when I work with red wine. If you don't drink wine, you can totally omit this step and just use a little bit of beef stock. But I have to tell you, if you're not an alcohol drinker, if you're not a wine drinker, and you are okay with using it in cooking and you're a little bit nervous, I say go ahead and use it, because most of the alcohol is going to cook out. But you're going to be left with a really sort of deep flavor. However, if you don't drink alcohol at all, or you don't like it, then just use some beef stock. Works just as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this cook out for about a minute, and then we'll be ready to add our tomatoes. I'm going to add in my tomato puree. Now, quick tip. When you're adding your tomato puree, you see you've just got so much goodness left over in your cans. So what I do is I take a little bit of water, put it in each one, because first of all, I do need some water to thin out the sauce anyway, so why not use the leftover that's in here? Look at that. See? no waste. Looks good. Give this a good stir. It smells really yummy and delicious already. Now I have to tell you, there is one ingredient in this recipe that cannot be substituted, which is thyme. And I don't mean the herb, I mean like you need to let this cook low and slow for a good 3 hours or so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on as low as it will go, partially cover the pan, and I'm going to let this cook for about 3 to 3.5 hours. And I'm going to stir it every now and then just to make sure nothing's sticking. That you cannot substitute. And I know a lot of people are going to say it's not necessary. Do it once and then let me know if it's necessary. Trust me, I can't make this stuff up. It just works. Now I'm going to just let this cook low and slow for about 3.5 hours, and then I'll show you what it looks like once it's done. It's simple. My sauce has been cooking for about 3.5 hours, and it's just how I want it. I've added some fresh basil. Now I'm going to season it with some salt and freshly ground black pepper. Make sure you taste it because you're going to need to season it well. And one other tip, depending on the kinds of tomatoes you buy, some are sweeter than others. If you find that your sauce is a little bit too tangy for you, I suggest adding about a tablespoon of sugar to this and it would be perfect. I've been tasting this, all along, so I know it's perfectly fine. Oh, it smells so delicious. I'm gonna give this a quick bite, a quick taste. When we were kids, one of the things we did on Sundays, like while this was cooking, my grandma would put a little bit of sauce in little bowls for me and my cousins, and that's what we would snack on before dinner, without pasta, just the sauce. And I still do that till this day. That is perfect. Now I know there's a lot here, but this keeps incredible in the freezer. So what I do is I put it in little plastic containers, and I'll put some in a little container that only serves 2, and then I put some in containers that serves 4. That way I always have it on hand for pretty much anything. If you want to see this being put to good use, stay tuned to my next video because I'm going to show you how to make a classic stuffed shells. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed spending time with me. Go to www.laureninthekitchen.com to get this very easy recipe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.